But we begin with the showdown with Russia over Ukraine. The White House warning that an attack could come at any time as President Biden engages in some last-ditch diplomacy with Vladimir Putin and the Ukrainian president over the weekend. Joining me now for more on all of this is former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East and ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy, as well as ABC News senior national correspondent Terry Moran, who is on the ground in Lviv, Ukraine. Terry, we're going to start with you. Here in the U.S., intelligence agencies are making these concerns extremely public. They're telling us every step of the way what's happening, what they think could happen. But what's it like there on the ground in Ukraine?
Well, Phil, good morning to you. Good evening from Lviv, the Catholic University here in the Ukrainian Catholic University here in Lviv. And the feeling here is very, very different than what the American government has been communicating. And that disconnect may be accurate or it may be something to be concerned about. But I'll tell you, we came out here in part because of the increasing tension around the borders. And we flew out here and the airport was almost deserted. But the real news here today, it seems to me, is the diplomatic front. It is accelerated. There is more activity. The German chancellor says there's more room for talks. Russia says there's more room for talks. And in fact, the Russian government is now saying that those troops massed on the border will go home after the exercises are completed in the next few days. Now, it doesn't matter, as the U.S. government has said, what Moscow is saying, but what they're seeing on the ground. And here in Ukraine, they are following their government's lead. Their government is saying, don't panic. That really what you're seeing is an information war, that Ukraine is caught between Russia's ambitions and America's geopolitical interests. And our job is not to buy into either one. Don't panic. But they can see those troops on the border. They can see what Russia is doing. And talking to people here, you get the sense that while they are living their lives, the airport, as I said, deserted Saturday night in Kiev, where we were, looked like a normal Saturday night. It's not far beneath the surface in every conversation that the concerns about what might happen are there. But right now, people remain calm. There's no rush for the borders. And it almost has given the disconnect with what the Biden administration has been telling Americans here, almost surreal sometimes. People call me, friends and loved ones, family are saying, you know, can you get out? And of course, we are making contingency plans. But more important, it does feel very, very different than how the Biden administration has been describing it. We will find out if the Ukrainian assessment is accurate or if something else happens.
Yeah, and Terry, on that point with this information war right now between the Americans and the Russians, I want to bring Mick in. Mick, why do you think the U.S. agencies and the administration being so open about what they think is going to happen as Russia continues to deny any intention to invade? Is it some sort of tactic, or are they just being transparent?
So, Phil, I think it's actually both. I think they want to make sure that the Russians know that we know what they're doing, both for transparency, as you say, so that they know that we don't want a miscalculation as we put forces in close proximity to each other. The other one is to essentially thwart some of their activities. If we put out there that we believe our intelligence that they are considering a false flag operation to incite this actual conflict, it might be more difficult to actually do that, in which anybody would believe it. So I think it's both transparency and an effort to thwart their even considering using some of these deceptive tactics.
And Terry, we know this in part because of your reporting. The latest movements from Russia is that submarines sailing into the Black Sea. More than 130,000 Russian troops are in place across Ukraine's borders, you've told us. Just this morning, Russia's defense minister says that military exercises are nearing their finish. And I'm curious to see what you make of that. It could go both ways, but does that mean that Russia's finished there and this is going to be de-escalating? Or does this mean they're finished exercising and ready to go in?
Well, it's pretty clear the Kremlin wants to keep people guessing, and so the diplomacy has accelerated with those statements from the Russian Foreign Ministry, opening the door, it seems, to a de-escalation here, to Russian troops pulling back. On the other hand, the actual facts on the ground is that you've got that submarine into the Black Sea, joining a massive flotilla out there. More than 30 warships, many of them major amphibious assault ships out there. And we are seeing in the open source intelligence that you can find more forces flowing west from eastern Russia. They're taking more forces, bringing more, and the forces that are here, it seems, are beginning to take up more forward positions close to the Ukrainian border. So the options there are open. The question is it a bluff or not? And the real challenge is, Vladimir Putin has asked for a lot. He's asked for the moon, essentially, from the West. He wants Ukraine, guarantee Ukraine will never join NATO. He wants NATO to roll back to 1997 positions with essentially the troops coming out of those newer NATO countries. Those are non-starters. So what does he get if he does pull back? Because he's put everything, he's got all his chips in the middle of the table right now. And the question is, what's he going to do?
Mick, as Terry points out, if it perhaps is not a bluff and Russia does decide to go in, tell us a bit what that might look like. What would Russia's first move be? And does Ukraine have the ability to fend it off?
So I think we're seeing the first of the movements that we would expect for a full-on invasion, and that is vehicles and personnel moving out of the assembly areas that Terry is just talking about. So they're starting to get into attack positions, tank formations, artillery, and the like. So what can we expect to see? The first would likely be a massive cyber attack to disrupt the communication system within Ukraine, electronic warfare to jam radars and other things that we detect, the onslaught of an air campaign, and then artillery in preparation for the battlefield, and then, of course, the movement of troops and tanks into Ukraine. Now, I think it's important to point out, this isn't a perfect example, but it is an example that's fairly recent. The conventional invasion and occupation of Iraq by the United States back in 2003. We had 180,000 troops to do that. And Iraq was about 40% less in size and about 7 million people less in population. So I think this is important to point out, because this is not going to be easy for the Russians, not the invasion and not the occupation.
All right, the eyes of the world on the Ukraine-Russian border today. Terry Moran, McMulray, thank you both so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.